One of the horrific unraveling human tragedies is taking place in Venezuela. There's really no reason for this. The people in Venezuela have always been industrious, used to be a democracy, used to be a capitalist economic system that they had there. It was a vibrant country. They have among the largest oil reserves in the entire world. And then Hugo Chavez struck. He was a dictator. He took control of the country. He stole from the country. His family stole from the country. He was nationalizing business after business after business. You can't get toilet paper there. You can't get medical services there. People wait in line for hours and hours and hours just to get morsels of food. There's widespread malnutrition. People are breaking into the zoos and anywhere they can to find food, to eat the animals. And now they put in place something that's almost a throwback to the 1940s and even earlier in Stalin's Russia, which is what? People are being told, okay, you're going to leave the cities, you're going to go out and you're going to farm for 60 days, perhaps 120 days, in order to feed yourselves and to feed your neighbors and so forth. It's gotten so bad that that's the condition. It is a country in complete freefall. But it always wasn't that way. I want to spend a little time, and this is a unique place, Levin TV, where we can do this. Non-commercial TV, not a lot of yapping guests, where we can take our time and be patient. And this is worth seeing. This is a video from Freedom Partners of Venezuela. What's taken place in Venezuela? It caught my attention, and I said, I have to show this to the Levin TV audience, a broader audience, or you're not going to see it. So here we go. Go.
Venezuela right now, to me, is a picture from my sister crying. What she sees are lines that go for blocks and blocks of people with kids in their arms, standing there for hours, getting up at 3 a.m. in the morning. She knows they're not going to get the food that they're in line for. Grocery stores in Venezuela, they're mostly empty. People literally starving. Hospitals have none of the basic medicines, hatred on the street, poverty, famine, people killing each other for basic needs. You hear it from your family, someone else, got shot or someone else got kidnapped. In my own family, we've had 2 kidnaps already. Imagine living inside of that reality. Looking at the country and seeing what it has become. What's most tragic about it is that it didn't have to be that way. Venezuela is a country that had the potential to be very rich. When oil was discovered, it really created an opportunity for people of the country to make the most of it. It certainly opened up a whole new level of wealth, created an internal dynamic that allowed businesses of all types to flourish. But as that wealth got in the hands of government, what was a great opportunity became actually a huge temptation that disintegrated into corruption. The intention was to liberalize more the economy and open up. What resulted was unequal reform, where some would be exposed to international competition, whereas others were protected because they were friends with those in power because of cronyism. The way it was done caused a lot of hardship. All the prices all of a sudden go up. There were protests, there were riots. This government that kind of everybody knew was corrupt now was really hurting them. And somebody came on the political scene promising to solve that. And that's where Chavez comes into the picture. Chavez was talking about legitimate problems, cronies and government rigging the system. He was promising to fix it by directly attacking the problem, which at the surface was income inequality. It was about the rich versus the poor.
Ponga en primer lugar al hombre, a la mujer, al niño venezolano, al ser humano, y cuyo objetivo fundamental antes que lo macroeconómico, es lo macrosocial, es decir, la gran...
And his message, given the conditions on the ground, starts to resonate with people. The business elite supported Chavez. He was perceived to be someone that can be more easily manipulated, perhaps a puppet. Support just shifted to the guy who seemed to have the better chance. He got the support of a big portion of the population. It's easy to forget he was democratically elected by a landslide many times. As time went on, when in power, he became more emboldened. The messaging changed. And gradually that speech became more hostile. A verbal attack on the 1% equivalent of Venezuela, the rich, oligarchs being called out by name.
Nosotros no queremos ser ricos. Ser rico es malo, es inhumano. Así lo digo y condene a los ricos.
Not only was he talking about it, but he was actually taking action. In the beginning, it was, some penalties here, a few confiscations there. When the cronies were no longer willing to play ball, he just turned around and used another group of unscrupulous business leaders. By the time it was obvious to many what was happening, it was already too late. He would walk around and just as if he was God, say, nationalize this and nationalize that.
¿Y este edificio?
Es un edificio que tiene comercio privado de joyería.
Expropiese.
De acuerdo.
¿Y aquel edificio allá en la esquina?
También son edificios que tienen locales comerciales.
Expropiese.
¿Cómo no, presidente?
¿Este edificio aquí cuál es?
También es un edificio que tiene locales comerciales de propiedad privada. Por lo tanto.
Expropiese, señor alcalde. Expropiese.
Why even have a middleman, right? Why don't we just take over the whole thing? Government could have never become this powerful and this tyrannical had it not first been crony. Then the government starts to also take steps to censor. Initially, it was very subtle, just a fine here and a fine there. But once you accept that, then it's just a matter of degree. Slowly but surely censoring the media and the opposition's voices at large. Then they have leveraged that to take away licenses and then just flat out close newspapers and TV channels, to the point where you look at the country today and there's no voice of opposition. And the only time when it would have potentially been viable to stop it was early on. And it's a downward spiral. It's a tragedy. People are dying of hunger. And that's what's happened in Venezuela. The Venezuelan story still remains for many as a story of another Latin American country that has failed. We think of it as that's Latin America and we are the United States, and that would never happen here. Why would it not happen here? Venezuela had a democracy, constitution, division of power in government, but people were not educated in the principles of freedom, and they vote for whoever promises more. The piece of paper that we hold so dearly here, the US Constitution, is just that, it's a piece of paper. The only thing keeping tyranny away in the US, the only thing keeping liberty alive, is that people understand it and that they themselves defend it. I had the ability to come to the United States. That's why I'm committed to defending it. But if this country disintegrates in the same way, where are we gonna go? What's the next, beacon of hope?
I played that for you, ladies and gentlemen, because it's poignant and it's compelling. And I fear it's happening to us. Obviously not exactly the same way, but I fear it's happening to us. When you watched that, wasn't that your concern? There's very little talk about individual liberty in this country. You don't hear it from either candidate. You don't hear it from the progressive statists. You don't hear it from the progressive populists and the progressive nationalists. You hear a lot of this redistribution of wealth, the rich versus the working people, the 1% versus the middle class. And this mantra, this meme, is now used not just by the Bernie Sanders communist left, but it is used by the Democrat Party, and now it's used by elements of the Republican Party. They claim they're outsiders, that they're anti-establishment. I am telling you, if we don't hold our Constitution tightly, that we're going to lose everything. You heard what the gentleman said. It's just a piece of paper if we don't believe in it. Judge Learned was a great judge, since gone, of course. But he wrote beautifully, and he wrote beyond the law. And he said essentially, the Constitution, due process, all that doesn't matter if the people no longer want to live in freedom. Do we want to live in freedom? How come the candidates don't talk about freedom? How come it's not discussed over and over and over again at either party's convention? It's mentioned here and there. What is it that makes America so different from all these other places? You know, we are different, despite the best efforts of the left to pretend that we're just one of many. We're different for a lot of reasons. But we're primarily different because we embraced what John Locke said, the man in the middle. Natural law and natural rights. That we have this sphere of freedom around each and every one of us. And we're born with it, these unalienable rights. The right to live and the right to be free. The right to enjoy our lives and to be happy. And the right to acquire things, like property, like a home, like food. And these are God-given rights, not government-given rights. In fact, we don't even talk about government yet. You must have a respect first for individual freedom. That is, the right to be unmolested by authority. And then we develop the civil society. Not with government. Civil society, think of it as your neighborhoods and your community at the most base level. People getting together. People attending church. People attending civics organizations. Little League. All these different things that are not government-oriented. The civil society. You must have a civil society, a tolerant civil society. And then you need laws, so you can protect yourself and protect your property, and so we can promote justice and have societal stability. Not just economic stability, but societal stability. So what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong, and that's the nature of the community. These are things we have a right to. These are things we are to believe in. Then comes government. Government's the last piece. And you need a government that is going to undergird individual liberty in the civil society. That's going to not just protect it, but nourish it and perhaps improve it by creating standards for the government and creating limitations on that government that you've just created. Limitations on that government. Just as people are imperfect, a handful of people running a government, they're imperfect too. When we talk about government, it's not an amorphous thing. So we put in place a government. To do what? To do what? To secure our liberty. That's what we put a government in place for. That's all been hijacked. It's all been perverted. What's the main thing our government does today? Takes from A and gives it to B. It redistributes wealth. Where's that in the Constitution? It's nowhere in the Constitution. What else does our government do? It controls us in little ways, big ways, and growing ways. How does it do it? Through laws, through regulations, thousands of them that are put out by the bureaucracy every single year, through executive fiats, through court decisions. How many of these decisions, laws, rules, and fiats expand our individual liberty, expand our unalienable rights, improve them, protect them? Almost none of them. We talk about these departments and agencies we create. The department of this, the department of that, the department of this, the department of that. Why do we create all these departments? Why do we need all these departments? We have a government that takes in trillions of dollars every year through confiscatory taxation. They changed the Constitution. Trillions of dollars every year, and it's not enough. So soon we'll have $20 trillion in fiscal operating debt and over $200 trillion in unfunded liability debt. You know what that is? That's insanity. We can't pay this debt off. It's called unserviceable debt, meaning you're going to have to blow it off. It has consequences. Great countries have become bad countries. Germany, the Weimar Republic, and so forth. You can see the old black and white films. People pushing around paper money in wheelbarrows because it's worth nothing. It's worth nothing. If we do not have a respect for individual liberty, if we do not comprehend the whole notion of civil society, and if we do not insist that the government live within its constitutional limits, we're going to lose everything. And neither of these candidates running for president ever talk about it. Hillary Clinton doesn't believe in it, and I'm not sure Donald Trump's given it much consideration. But it's not just them. The journalists who populate newspapers and radio and TV, the websites, even the conservative and pseudo-conservative websites, most of them don't even address these things. They're busy out there pushing the class warfare meme too. Talk radio, very little. And on TV, almost nothing. Almost nothing. And you can see that every day we lose a little bit more of our liberty, whether it's health care or our private property rights, whether it's through water or so-called air rules and so forth. Every day we lose a little bit more of our liberty. But the scary part is more and more people celebrate it. So the left has hijacked this whole notion of liberty and civil society and government. They've hijacked this, and they've turned it on its head. Now we exist for government. Let's say you're laid off, and you own a small home, and you really have hit a bad economic period, and you're having trouble paying your bills. You're not profligate. You're not a spendthrift. You're a person who's been very earnest your whole life. If you don't pay your property taxes, you lose your home. Whether you eat or not is of no consequence. Whether you have an old automobile to try and find work is of no consequence. Whether you have other bills is no consequence. If you don't pay that property tax, you lose everything. Same with income taxes. You may be behind. You may be in a pickle. You may be having difficulty. You don't pay your income tax, they will fine you and penalize you. And in the end, they will imprison you. That's what they'll do. And you can see more and more of the Bill of Rights. We have a candidate in Hillary Clinton who's running for president of the United States, who's talking about how she will attack the Second Amendment, your right to bear arms. How will she attack it? She will attack the manufacturers of arms, the manufacturers of bullets. You have a Democrat Party that actually proposed an amendment to curb the First Amendment. Free speech. They said there's too much money in politics. Too much money in politics? They're all about money in government. There's too much money in government. What happens to money in politics? What do they do with the money? They buying drugs? They buying properties? No. They're buying airtime to communicate with you and me. Or they're paying for mailers or whatever. It's of no consequence, really. There's nothing corrupt about that. That's the First Amendment. Look at religious liberty in this country. Just in the last 5, 6, 7 years. Marriage has been redefined, not by the states and the people, but by 5 lawyers on the Supreme Court, just 5. And as a consequence, what's happening now? You're violating state and other civil rights laws if for religious reasons you have an objection to catering, let's say, a same-sex marriage. Why? There's plenty of people who will cater it because of growing intolerance and the iron fist. We now have the Black Lives Matter movement. If you say all lives matter, you're under attack. People are actually being assaulted if they dare to say that. College kids are being punished, suspended, and having to attend classes because they don't understand the significance of Black Lives Matter versus all lives matter. The society's crumbling. The culture's crumbling. The government's not. The government's ballooning up. It's becoming more and more muscular, more and more powerful, more and more ubiquitous. It is the Leviathan. It is the Leviathan that Thomas Hobbes wrote about. It is the Leviathan. It's everywhere. Think about it. You cannot buy a toaster without the government having approved the energy efficiency of the toaster. Look around your home. The issue isn't what's regulated. The issue is what's not regulated. And so when we look at this film on Venezuela, it should help us crystallize our thoughts and our concerns. And it should also make you even a more vocal and active, constitutional conservative, not nationalist, populist, agrarian, not a progressive statist, not a whatever. Because the only governing system that can work with the notion of individual liberty that I've talked about and the civil society is the constitutional Republican small r system. There is no other system. And it's collapsing. And we have to defend it. And that's why I wanted you to see this film about Venezuela.